Welcome back and happy Friday, May 21st, 2021. This time of year brings a lot of things having to do with culture and politics. I actually think on the cultural front, some of the most important things are the messages adults communicate to high school and college seniors in their commencement ceremonies, as we've been discussing over the past few days. And I also think some of those messages are where the political and non-political get very confused, sometimes deliberately so. Too many who are political try to communicate life messages and advice in ways that are political, or in ways where their political point of view confuses any generally helpful non-political or life and commencement advice. And yet one of the reasons I think commencement addresses are so important is because I think our young adults need help today in ways they never before have. In truth, we all do, really. To that end, as many of you know, I do an annual on-air commencement speech, and here is 2021's. Graduates, here are some life lessons I hope you'll take. Some from journalists, some from philosophers, some from political leaders, some from religious sources, some from scholars of other sorts, some from movies, some from lyricists, and some from just ordinary, wise people. And before I begin any of it, let me first wish you congratulations on your achievement. A lot of people wish they could be where you are right now. Well done. Enjoy. First and foremost, enjoy. There will be plenty of times in life where things are not happy or joyful. This is not one of them. Savor your moment. You've earned it. 1. C.S. Lewis, it seems to me, needs to be read a lot more. In a year commemorating the most extraordinary of challenges from a virus and from political extremism and violence, for you in school as much as for you not in school, as well as for us not in school, C.S. Lewis could have been our first intellectual vaccine if we took it when it first came out. On the issue of what I said above, just too much politics, too few politically free zones, too much making politics of almost everything, C.S. Lewis warned in 1945, quote, "A sick society must think much about politics, as a sick man must think much about his digestion. To ignore the subject may be fatal cowardice for one as for the other, but if either comes to regard it as the natural food of the mind, if either forgets that we think of such things only in order to be able to think of something else, then what was undertaken for the sake of health has become itself a new and deadly disease." I show you the times. In regarding the virus, C.S. Lewis confronted it in 1948, except then it was the fear of atomic warfare. He wrote, quote, "In one way we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb. How are we going to live in the atomic age? I am tempted to reply, why, as you would have lived in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year, as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night, or indeed as you are already living in an age of cancer, an age of syphilis, an age of paralysis, an age of air raids, an age of railway accidents, an age of motor accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb was invented, and quite a high percentage of us were going to die in unpleasant ways. We had indeed one very great advantage over our ancestors, anesthetics. But we have that still. It is perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which already bristled with such chances, and in which death itself was not a chance at all but a certainty. This is the first point to be made, and the first action to be taken is to pull ourselves together. Get a grip. If we are all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things. Praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts, not huddled together like frightened sheep, thinking about death. They may break our bodies, a microbe can do that, but they need not dominate our minds. Once upon a time, we were told not to be afraid or be not afraid. Once upon a time, psychologists told us not to make decisions out of fear. Now, it seems to me, We all just really need more C.S. Lewis. 2. The best line I ever heard in a commencement speech was Ted Koppel's. He told a Stanford class, apply a strong standard of morality to your lives, and if periodically you fail, as you surely will, adjust your lives and not the standards. It leads me to lesson number 3. I have never ever met a perfect person. Indeed, to many, the only perfect person died about 2,000 years ago. Do not put people on pedestals. Do not engage in hero worship. People will disappoint you. This includes parents, teachers, friends, spouses, politicians, favorite authors, and religious leaders, the person you may even admire most. As Dennis Prager said, if you are not prepared to be disappointed in your friends, you are not prepared to have friends. There's a lot of wisdom in that. Don't forget it. People will disappoint. And that's life. Because number 4, life can be hard from time to time, and the only person who makes no errors is the person who does not exist. The famous psychiatrist Carl Menninger wrote this: when a trout rising to a fly gets hooked and finds himself unable to swim about freely, he begins a fight which results in struggles and splashes and sometimes an escape, in the same way the human struggles with the hooks that catch him. Sometimes he masters his difficulties, and sometimes they are too much for him. The struggles are all that the world sees, and it usually misunderstands them. It's hard for a free fish to understand what is happening to a hooked one, after all, until he is on the hook himself one day. 5. So try to understand other people's struggles. We will all have them. That's a guarantee. Some we will see, some we won't. But I guarantee you, everyone has struggles and failures too. And often, by the way, those failures can lead to great success. If you doubt this, read the biographies of any great inventor or leader, from Thomas Edison to Steve Jobs, from Abraham Lincoln to Margaret Thatcher to Ronald Reagan. Failure is temporary and will happen. And usually it is simply the world's way, life's way, of clearing a path to success you never dreamed of. Which takes me to number 6. Try and take it easy on yourself. Today you are flying high. Tomorrow you may also be. Or you may not be. You may not have gotten the job you wanted, or you may have messed up the first task you were given in the new job you did get and wanted. It's okay. It happens to everyone. I promise. A failure is never the end of a story or your story, and in time I guarantee you, you will forget it. And so too will others. Except they'll forget it faster than you. I promise. 7. Don't worry too much about what others think of you. Worry about what you think of you. Ann Landers got something very right and important about this. If you worry too much about what others think or say about you, you will never move forward. You will be frozen, paralyzed. She put it this way, quote, pay no attention to disparaging remarks. Remember, the person who carried the message may not be the most accurate reporter in the world, and things become twisted in their retelling. Live so that nobody will believe them, close quote. That last part bears repeating. If you are concerned about what others think of you, live and comport your life in a way that is a living, walking, breathing reproof of negative comments or disparaging remarks by others. Live so nobody believes them. It's more important to see a sermon, after all, than to hear one. 8. 2 things are very important: patience and authenticity. On authenticity, a famous Hasidic rabbi once said, the only question we'll be asked when we die is not why we didn't become more like this person or why didn't we become more like that person. We will be asked, why didn't you become you? On patience, I can only relay something I've heard a lot of leaders and successful people tell me over and over again. The greatest decisions they ever made were not decisions they thought were that important at the time, in part because the greatest things that ever happened to them could not have been planned or sometimes even dreamed. I know this to be true in my life too, so just remember, as the Talmud puts it, the only testing ground of the heroic is the mundane. You can pass the test of big things only after you pass the test of small ones. Treat every small thing, treat everything as big or at least as important as possible. I have a dear friend who puts it this way: whenever you have to face someone or something uncomfortable, just ask yourself, what is my holy mission here? Just asking that changes almost everything. So be patient and be good. Life has a way of working out if your internal compass is pointed true north, and it happens when you least expect it. 10, be forgiving to yourself and others. Remember the Lord's Prayer. We ask forgiveness from God a lot, and we hope for it. We depend on it. How much more should we be forgiving of others? I know how much I appreciate it when I'm forgiven for something, so the shoe should be on the other foot too. Be forgiving to others. 11, Francis of Assisi said a lot of beautiful things. Here's a sentence from him that is worth remembering. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted. Here's why. 12, the best way to get out of your head, to ease your mind, to solve your own troubles, is to help another with his or hers. When you are in what you perceive to be dire straits, try to help someone else. Try to comfort someone else. You'll find a magical solution to your own troubles that way. You truly will. Again, it is more important to comfort rather than be comforted. And it's a good thing to do anyway. As 13, the Dalai Lama may be the happiest, most joyful man on earth. Put it this way, our chief purpose in life is to help other people, and if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. This from a man who's entitled to have a lot of resentments, watching his country be taken over and destroyed. And yet his philosophy in life is not about revenge, but about helping others, or at the very minimum, not hurting them. 14, be decent at all times. If there's a question as to what to do in a certain situation, difficult or not, ask yourself, what's the decent thing to do? It's a great word, decent, and it's too often forgotten. But when you think about how to implement that word, how to act on it, it's a word that almost always tells you what to do and how to do it. It self-instructs. I know a few better self-defining words. 15, I don't remember where I heard this, but someone once said, when there's a difficult or maddening or tense situation where you think you should say something, put yourself through this 3-part test. Ask yourself, does something need to be said? Does something need to be said now? And does it really need to be said by me? 16, another piece of advice for difficult or maddening situations. It's something Fred Rogers carried with him in his suit pocket. Quote, calm is a language the blind can read and the deaf can hear. Close quote. Be as calm as you can, as often as you can. 17, keep in mind this. People, especially young people, most often damage themselves with drugs or alcohol to change the way they feel, to feel normal, if you will, or to change their normal. Give them reasons not to need or perceive the need to change their normal. You do this by putting them at ease over whatever their situation is. We all have crosses to carry. Let them know theirs can be carried too, and it does not require a quick and damaging fix. That fix can be life-altering or life-ending. Trust me, I've seen a lot of this. The first shot is always a volitional choice. The second, and a finite many more may not be, and too often there's never a second shot. 18, when in doubt about how to deal with a difficult person, try and find a way to love that person, or at least see the child in them or some redeeming quality about them. Most people have something redeeming about them, something worthy of love. I love the line by Helen Keller, quote, "It is wonderful how much time good people spend fighting the devil. If they would only expend the same amount of energy loving their fellow men, the devil would die in his own tracks from boredom." If that's hard to remember, just ask my friend's question, what is my holy assignment here? 20, I must read this old letter from a survivor of the World War II concentration camps that she gave to teachers every year at the beginning of a school year, courtesy of a reprint from child psychologist Chaim Genot. Maybe it has resonance today too. Quote, I am a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no person should witness, gas chambers built by learned engineers, children poisoned by educated physicians, infants killed by trained nurses, women and babies shot by high school and college graduates. So I'm suspicious of education. My request is this: help your children become more human. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters. skilled psychopaths, or educated Eichmanns. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more human. Of all the quotes I read in a given year, that one is the most requested for repetition. I hope it means something to and for you just now. I know there's a lot of seriousness above that I just gave you, but let it not get in the way of your true education. Hunter S. Thompson gave you the roadmap, but only on this. Quote, life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. The last thing I'll say is perhaps my favorite line ever. It's from the late education professor Leo Buscaglia, whose specialty was teaching those with special needs. It's something I've always loved, and I close with it. Only the weak are cruel. Gentleness can only be expected from the strong. One important note as I close, maybe something I've said today will resonate with you. Maybe not, but it's advice I love, and I fail each piece of it every day. To come back to where I started, people simply are not perfect. Now go forward with your new beginning, and remember, class is not over. You still have a holy assignment, a lot of them, in front of you. Go find them, and more importantly, make sure and recognize them when they find you, and get ready for a great ride. God bless.